Now, the biggest reason why fetches are so good is for their amazing mana fixing. They allow you to shape your mana base in a match around your hand rather than desperately trying to cast spells because you're drawing the wrong lands. You might argue, well, just play shock lands. Sure, but you're not always going to be consistent with the dual lands, and only being limited to 4 copies of a non-basic land, you're not always going to draw what you need. With 2-color decks, go crazy, go apeshit, put all 4 shocks in that you want.
I forgot to mention that putting fetches in a 2-color deck is almost like having another pair of shock lands. Thank you.
3-color decks is a completely different story. Let's say, for example, you're playing Naya, green, white, and splashing a little bit of red, and you don't put in any fetches. It's only Temple Gardens and Stomping Grounds. Let's say you get an opening hand that looks something like this: a Noble Hierarch, a Generator Servant, a Through the Breach, an Emrakul, and 3 Temple Gardens. Now, based on our hand, we absolutely need a red source in order to cast this Through the Breach to play our mommy. And even from the help with our little ramp friends here, we're not going to be able to play this Through the Breach because we need a red source. Now, let's say instead of only shocks, we play with fetches. Now we can grab, with fetch lands, now we can grab only what we need to play the match. No unnecessary mulligans, hoping for the right lands, and no unnecessary mana hosing. Now you may notice that they're the exact same color as the Temple Gardens. Now what's so cool about fetch lands is that it says here, sacrifice Windswept Heath, search your library for a forest or plains card and put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library. Now, as you can see with shocks, their subtype is forest plains, Temple Garden being the specific example. So now the fetch lands say forest or plains. So if we want, we can play it, sack it, and go and get what we need, being the Stomping Grounds that have a red source that allow us to cast our Through the Breach. Now, not only can you grab other shock lands, you can also just grab a basic land, a forest, a plains, as whatever the fetch land says, grab whatever you need. And like I said earlier, and probably the greatest thing about fetches is the amazing mana fixing, allowing you to grab off-color lands when you absolutely need them. In our case, we needed a red source, so we can play mommy. Another great thing about fetches is their synergy with other cards. For example, Knight of the Reliquary. Knight of the Reliquary gets +1/+1 for each land card in your graveyard. Now, since the fetches are lands and you have to sack them to go get other lands that you need to play, once they're in the graveyard, they're going to boost your Knight of the Reliquary. Another great example is Dredge. Early in the game, you're more than likely going to play fetch lands. This way you can sack them and go and grab what you need. With them going to the graveyard, you can retrieve them by playing a card like Life from the Loam. I just realized this is not a fetch land. Another great example is with Fatal Push. With Fatal Push, you can destroy target creature if it has converted mana cost 2 or less, and it has a revolt trigger that can destroy a creature if its converted mana cost is 4 or less, instead if a permanent you controlled left the battlefield this turn. Meaning that you can sack a fetch land, go and grab a black, and take out, I don't know, a beefy monster, a questing beast, for example. Now all Wizards has to do is just make these things accessible and not a goddamn luxury to own.
Kanye and I are the biggest fans of Family Feud. What'd you say earlier? You waited your whole life?